Wonderful.
He's going to be giving a great talk about emerging trends in technical recruiting, AI. Really appreciate your chatting with us.
Fantastic. Well, I really appreciate that, Lindy. Thank you. Okay, I've got to make sure that I've got the clicker here. And I think I do.
You should just be able to literally just like
Click. Okay, fantastic. Well, first and foremost, I wanted to say a true and sincere thank you to Aisha. That was a truly inspiring story of your life and career, and the impact that you've already made to society is immense. So we're very grateful to have you here. In fact, I have to say that when we were just waiting for you to start your speech, Basil Murray in the back of the room, who is one of our senior leaders for ClearanceJobs, said, "Hey, isn't it really cool that we have a real astronaut as our keynote speaker today?" And I said, "Hell yes." As it turns out, as Lindy indicated, when I was 18 years old, I actually went from Idaho Falls, Idaho, to the Air Force Academy, specifically with the goal of becoming an astronaut. And you have to understand how difficult it is to be an astronaut. In the Air Force, the traditional track is that you go to UPT, undergraduate pilot training, and if you're in the top 10% of your graduate class from UPT, you can select to be a fighter pilot. And if you are one of the top fighter pilots, you go to a place called Red Flag, which is Nellis Air Force Base outside of Las Vegas, and you essentially get training in advanced techniques. If you become one of the very top fighter pilots, then you could become a test pilot. If you become one of the top test pilots in the United States, then you could apply to become an astronaut. And you have to understand that to win the job of becoming an astronaut for the Air Force, it's a 1 in 10,000 probability that you could do that. Now, my track was a little bit different. When I was at the Air Force Academy, I went from 20/20 eyesight to 2100 eyesight. And you can only get to UPT by having less than 20/30 eyesight. And so I went into the space program, but on the engineering side. And I was actually assigned to Los Angeles Air Force Base, which is the Space and Missile Systems Center. And I'm very grateful for that experience in my life. Now, the irony of this story is that now the Air Force Academy has a LASIK center. And they will LASIK you down to 2010 every year as if you were going to the dental clinic. And so it's a completely different era right now. And I'm grateful that people have that opportunity. The other thing I want to say is thank you for everybody that joined our event last night at the Polaris Hotel. I was told that several people ended up at Dooley's Bar. And I want to say that that actually has special remembrances for me because the name of a fourth classman or a freshman at the Air Force Academy is Dooley. And that's because the Latin word dulia means slave. So something else to know about the Air Force Academy, a little bit of trivia. So with that, I want to walk you through a very mundane briefing compared to Aisha's discussion on what's important to know about AI right now. And obviously AI is a very big topic. It's the topic du jour all the time. One of the things that I like to do when I come to the Connect conference series is to share some information that we see on the DICE platform. So we have two brands, ClearanceJobs obviously, but also DICE. And DICE is a platform that's been around for 34 years. We have roughly 8 million profiled technology professionals on the platform. Any given day, we have about 150,000 tech job openings on the platform as well. And we do a lot of studies associated with what we're seeing in terms of tech job trends. And that's what I'm going to be sharing today in specific to AI. So with that, the name of the briefing is What You Need to Know Right Now. And maybe the clicker does not work. Oh, you got me? Okay. So one of the things that I want to address is that it's not a fad. Now that might sound crazy to even talk through the fact that it's not a fad, but I will tell you that I talk to investors, I talk to people outside of like the technical workforce, and they think that a generative AI or AI in general could be one of those fads that has come and gone in the technology world, like the metaverse, or like NFTs, or like Web 3.0. So there's still a lot of controversy as to whether or not generative AI is a real trend and it's going to have a real effect on society. But if we go to the next chart, here is a chart that comes from an interesting study that was released in May of this year by a woman named Mary Meeker. And you should understand that Mary Meeker was a key analyst at Morgan Stanley throughout most of the early 2000s. She came out with an annual report, which was her Internet Trends report, which was voluminous. It was considered to be the master class on what was happening inside of the internet every single year. And it was generally about 100 pages. So she stopped in 2019 on a dime. And nobody really heard about what she was doing or what she was interested in. Well, as of May of this year, she came out with her report that is entitled Trends, Artificial Intelligence, 340 pages this time. And one of the most intriguing things that she did right at the beginning of the report is she said, this is the user base increase, subscriber base increase, and revenue increase for ChatGPT. So over the course of 2.5 years, from October of 22 to present timeframe, May, we see this asymptotic increase in the number of users, subscribers, and revenue. In fact, what's fascinating from a business perspective for me is that OpenAI, the owner of ChatGPT, went from $0 of revenue in October of 22 to $4 billion at the end of 2024. And then, as of June, their run rate revenue is $10 billion. So this is a company that is generating $10 billion right now by answering your queries on ChatGPT. It is a real thing that's happening in society today. So let's go to the next chart. Another really interesting report that I refer you to is the DICE July 2025 report. And we do issue reports generally about every half year, sometimes quarterly, for DICE as to the trends that we're seeing in terms of job growth. This is a depiction of the number of jobs on the platform that required AI-related skills in January of last year versus today. It has grown from 10% requiring AI-related skills to 36% requiring AI skills. A third of all tech positions in the United States on our platform now require an AI-related skills. And we throw out the name AI very easily. It's an umbrella term. But for us, it is a taxonomy of 366 specific skills. So there's an immense amount of activity that's happening on the DICE platform today. The next chart really shows you where the hiring is taking place. And we're going to get everybody these charts. I know that's probably very difficult to see them, especially in the back. But it comes from a different report, which was written by our team in May. And it specifically spoke to what recruiters should know about hiring technology professionals that have AI skills. And who is doing the hiring right now, and specifically by category or industry, but also the highest ranking companies. And what you're going to see here is the number one category for hiring AI-related skilled technology professionals are consulting companies. And if you think about it, that makes sense. Because anytime there's been a major technology shift in the United States, the Fortune 1000 companies engage IBM, McKinsey, Accenture, and Deloitte, and they say, what does this mean to me? Now, you have to understand that if you engage McKinsey in a project, you have to pay at least $1 million. They won't touch anything unless it's $1 million. So it's only the largest companies in the United States that can essentially engage them saying, can you give us the use cases? Can you do a proof of concept? Can you show us what AI means to our company and what we could do in the future with AI? So consulting, number one category by far. The second largest grouping of industries are obviously software and technology. Why? Because they live and breathe technology change all day long. So they embrace technology change, and so they already get it. They already know that they need AI engineers because AI engineers are their future. And that's the reason why you have Amazon, Meta, Google, and Apple on the top list of the top 15 hiring companies in the United States right now. The third category or grouping of categories is really those folks that are associated with retail, manufacturing, finance, and healthcare. And that's because they see the early work streams being, or the workflows that they have in their companies being easily automated by AI. But the bottom line is that it is happening right now, and there is a true large amount of activity associated with AI. Now, there's also a distinct change in the environment from last year to this year. And that change is that last year, if you looked at the AI skills that were being posted for on DICE, you would see the terminology like machine learning or natural language processing. You're talking about people that would be working specifically on models, and large language models, or what they call small language models today, because small language models are kind of personalized models for a company, and not necessarily using ChatGPT, but they could be derivative of ChatGPT or Claude or the number of other models out there. But they were serious, like AI scientists. Now, this year, it's flipped over to what we call AI orchestrators. And these are people that are seasoned engineers that understand how to apply AI and these large language models to business process. So they are folks that have the titles of architect or consultant or analyst. And so that has been a big, big change over the course of the last year. Now, one of the outcomes is that there is a distinct pattern as to who is being hired. This is, again, a derivative of the July 2025 DICE jobs report, and it shows a pattern of who is being hired first half of this year versus first half of last year by age cohort. So effectively, the largest number of people that have been hired over the course of the year have been people that have between 6 and 9 years of experience. The number of people in the workforce that are associated with the technology workforce has increased 20% in that cohort. You can see that it's also high for 10 plus years, but for folks that have 0 to 2 years of experience, and you might have heard this or might have read articles about this, they actually have seen a decay in the amount of job opportunities available to them. Why? Because if you're trying to automate workflows, you have to have experienced those workflows. So you're looking for people that understand business processes across a lot of different functional areas in the company: marketing, sales, engineering, operations. If we go to the next page, here is a interesting job opportunity that I literally took down from DICE just a few days ago that illustrates this aspect of what we're seeing. The evidence of why the orchestration job requires a significant amount of experience. This is for a company called Reviture. They're looking for a Gen AI adoption manager. The minimum requirements are 10 plus years of professional experience, including at least 2 to 3 years of hands-on experience delivering Gen AI use cases with measurable business impact. That's an interesting request because Gen AI has only been around for 2.5 years. The second item, proven track record of implementing at least 3 to 4 real-world Gen AI solutions using diverse technology stacks. Third requirement, solid understanding of Gen AI development frameworks, LLM APIs, prompt engineering, and orchestration pipelines. Fourth requirement, strong knowledge of the AI ML lifecycle from use case intake through deployment and monitoring. The nice to haves, the preferred qualifications, experience in enterprise environments and working across multiple business functions. This is a serious set of requirements for this particular position, but that is what's being posted right now on the DICE platform. Now, I should say that overall, if we go to the next slide, overall, the total number of job postings on DICE is at about 70% of what we consider to be normal. And you might say, well, over the course of the last 5 years, what's normal? Like we came, in 2020, everything just stopped. And then everything boomed back in 2021, 2022. So what is normal? So we use 2019 as the last baseline normal year of tech hiring. And in that year, there was roughly about 300,000 new tech job postings every single month on the DICE platform. Right now, we're at about 212,000 tech job postings in pretty steady state for the first half of this year. Now, the intriguing thing about that And a lot of people are asking us questions about this, is why isn't it going down? Especially with fears of recession and all the kind of swirling controversy associated with tariffs and everything else that's going on in the world today. Well, I personally think that you have two counterbalancing forces. You have this surging demand for people with AI skills, but at the same time, you have CEOs and CFOs that are confused. And this is a great quote from Josh Bersin. And if you don't know Josh Bersin, he's a very famous consultant for the HR industry. He shows up at HR Tech and multiple different conferences as a keynote speaker. And he says, I talk with senior HR leaders every single day, and there is a unanimous story. The CEO and CFO have mandated a shift to AI, so stop hiring workers and get going implementing AI. So the bottom line is that there is this haze over the environment as to what AI means in terms of your hiring plan. But it has stabilized in the United States in terms of the number of tech job postings, at least on the DICE side, that we're seeing. So one thing that is very important to understand as well, and it's lining up with that same last thought, is that there is going to be a change in the way that we work, the way that I work, the way that you work, the way that everybody works in society. And there's this, I was going to say, let's go to that next chart. There's this concept that we want to talk about being a super worker. And this comes from Josh Bersin as well. Next chart. So the bottom line is that if you think about job trends longitudinally, in the United States, because we're a capitalist economy, we're constantly automating. We're trying to figure out how to do things more efficiently. That's the bottom line with profit motive. And this is a great quote, however, written by McKinsey Global Institute, where they say, in 5 years time frame, 2030, we estimate activities that account for 30% of US working hours could be automated by AI, up from 21% as a baseline. So we were already automating, but AI will essentially supercharge the cycle of what we actually automate. And the bottom line is that we have to change the way that we actually work as individuals and as teams and as companies. If we go to the next chart, this is, once again, Josh Bersin, and he wrote a really interesting article that I highly recommend reading. It came out in January of this year. It's called The Rise of the Superworker, Delivering on the Promise of AI. He has this idea that we will all have a team of AI assistants in the future. We're going to be managing a team, and we're going to be the super worker in the middle of the team. And the super worker is an individual who uses AI to dramatically enhance their productivity, performance, creativity. They're going to be super curators and craftsmen perfecting the product. But the product underlying is going to be largely created by AI. In my opinion, this is similar to what Jamie Dimon said last year when he said, you won't be replaced by AI, you will be replaced by a person that knows how to use AI better than you do. So it's the same basic concept, very relevant for today. Now, Josh also has this framework where he says, over the course of time, we're going to become very efficient at figuring out how to embed AI in our daily workflows, and generative AI specifically, or agentic AI. But then over the course of time, companies are going to figure out, and it's going to be truly transformative as to how to do things differently, how to change the processes themselves. So that's his framework. If we go to the next chart, I want to just point out, when I think about the big picture trends that have happened over the course of my career, because I've been in a career in technology for 30 years, this has precedent. It's not like we haven't seen these kind of big technology shifts in the past. And it's important to understand that the prevailing wisdom at the time of the shift doesn't necessarily come to fruition. So back when I was in high school, they went from slide rules to calculators. And the expected impact was that we'd have less engineers and scientists in the United States. If you think about that, that's almost ridiculous. But the actual demand for engineers increased as calculators democratized access to complex math. So there's actually more engineers and scientists, not less today, than the advent of moving to the calculator. Then the other big change that happened to me when I was in 1985 timeframe was the advent of spreadsheets. And there was a spreadsheet called Lotus. And then nobody cared about it anymore. Came Excel. But the bottom line is that back then, the prevailing wisdom was that we were going to have fewer bookkeepers and accountants because everything would be automated in a spreadsheet. What actually happened? The number of accountants grew and people demanded more financial information. Anybody knows that goes to our monthly performance review, we have a lot of financial information, and that's because we have a lot of spreadsheets. Then the other big interesting tectonic shift that happened, if you recall, we used to have desktops years ago, and then we created the idea of a mobile platform that was larger than your mobile phone called a laptop. And we thought that that was going to automate white-collar work, much like they're talking about AI today. What actually happened was the creation of the knowledge worker. So the exact opposite happened. And the bottom line is, I think everybody should be aware that when we think about having these AI skills, we are also at this inflection point that always happens when there's a change in technology, where you have to figure out how you allow people to understand that you have those skills. How do you verify or validate the credential? And the answer is you usually have to go to some form of a course and get certified in it. And if you asked the team at DICE what certifications were available last year for AI, they would say, there's nothing. Nothing. Like I asked them last year. I asked our editorial team specifically, and I said, well, let's talk about the certifications for AI. And they said, it doesn't exist. Well, the other emergence of this trend that is going to be ubiquitous, that we're all going to have to know AI, is the idea that there are certifications now, even at the leadership level, which is pretty profound. Google has this certification called the Google Cloud Certified Generative AI Leader for people that are non-technical. For people that are technical, I always say, you need to learn Python. Python is the gateway skill set for AI in general. And so Python Institute has a number of different certifications this year. And then also AWS, which everybody knows here, if we have mostly recruiters in our environment, they have a number of important certifications, and they have just come out with the Certified Associate Python Programmer and also the Certified Machine Learning Specialty. So the fact that specialization in skill set moves to certification means that the trend is real. And hopefully everybody will see even more and more certifications over the course of time. The other thing that's important to understand, I'm going to end here, is that by having this skill set, you have a vastly higher compensation than your contemporaries, than your peers. And the reason for that is pretty clear. After being in this job for multiple years and seeing multiple reports about job trends, I could tell you that it all comes down to economics 101. Supply versus demand. I clearly told you that there's demand for workers with AI skills. 36% of positions on the DICE platform today require AI skills. There's nowhere near that amount of people that have AI skills in the United States. So because there's such an huge demand, small supply, the price gets bid up. And this chart basically says that if you have any AI skill and you tie it to a job title, whether that's a database designer, a lawyer, sales and marketing manager, financial analyst, or accountant, you get a 25% increase in your compensation. That is significant. That's a good call to action for having these kind of skill sets because they're super meaningful and they will be meaningful for society for the future. So I know my briefing was a little bit drier than Aisha's, but I'm happy to take any questions if you have them. Or I might have to actually ask Lindy because she always tells me that I need to keep on track.
No, you're fine this time. I didn't
Okay.
pull off the stage
Well,
last time.
I did get pulled off the stage in San Diego. Haven't gotten the hook yet. Yes, ma'am.
So on that last point, the 25% increase, when you say if you have the AI skills, what skills do you need with that?
Well, so again, we have this taxonomy of 366 skills, and there are skills that are kind of in buckets associated with, I would say, strictly speaking, engineering large language models, and that could be machine learning, or that could be natural language processing. There are a whole bunch of like individual technology skills associated with all of the different frameworks too. Like there's this framework called LangChain that's very, very important. Then there are these orchestration skills that are becoming very important, where you essentially plug in AI to the business process. But if you're interested, I can get you the 366 skills, because it's getting, and you know, I would say 2 years ago, if people talked about AI, it would be a couple of skills. And so it's blossoming and rapidly expanding.
Can I just follow up on that?
Yeah.
I'm asking because I work in career services at university. We work with, on the soft skill side, with international affairs students. And we are now just starting to implement AI and more technology skills into our curriculum. And so I would love to know, for those with a social science background, what
they should know as a minimum about AI? That's a good question. Like I looked at the Google certification for managers, and it's really good overview of how AI works, from large language models to the interesting use cases that are emerging today. Like I think anybody should know what is being AI enabled right now, because that's what everybody's working on. And you're going to get a job because everybody is trying to fix that particular area. One area that is enormously powerful for AI is marketing, as an example. There are a lot of companies that are, for example, putting in all of their past imagery and marketing materials into a customized GPT, and then they'll write a prompt saying, I want to have a new advertising campaign that has this theme, build it for me, and just give me the image files. And so marketing is an important use case. Customer success is another important use case. You could put in all of the questions that have come in over the course of the last 5 years in your particular company, and the answers, and then the GPT, the customized GPT, will automatically respond to a customer query. A lot of compliance work, even inside of DHI, we have to comply to, obviously, any government regulation, but there are specific privacy regulations associated with the state of California. And if somebody asks to unsubscribe, you have to be able to verify that. We do that all through an automated AI-enabled process. But I would say I would be very familiar with the concepts, the terminology, and then the emerging use cases. That's what I would tell any student that isn't, strictly speaking, like a comp sci major. But I can get you the taxonomy. The taxonomy gets pretty deep into a lot of tech skills, though. It might not be going in the right direction that you're looking for.
Thank you.
Excellent question. Yes, sir?
Yeah, do you have any info around the impacts on the federal space as it applies to all these technologies, and anything yet?
You know, that's a really good question. We actually have done a lot of queries in GovWinIQ to see if there are AI-enabled projects, and they're not being specifically described that way. I would say that there is a lot of data analysis and data delivery. Like if you think about how Palantir has grown like 600% over the last two years in terms of its market capitalization, that's recognition that the government understands the importance of managing data, but it doesn't necessarily say we're AI enabling these processes. In fact, it's kind of weird right now because DOGE obviously targeted a lot of consulting contracts with the idea that all consulting contracts were bad because, you know, why do we need consultants to help us run the government? So it is a really strange period of time. And my belief is the government will find some AI-enabled projects and use cases, and they'll promote them. I personally think that they need to have like a AI czar. A lot of the more forward-leading companies now are creating an AI council and an AI chief executive, like a C-level executive. But we don't see that necessarily in the government space. And I don't know, maybe I should ask Alex or Lindy if you see any evidence of, you know, any projects that are happening inside of the government that I'm not aware of. I think
I'd say no, I don't, not that I'm aware of either, but that it's coming, certainly. I mean, it's definitely coming. As you know, the government's a little slower to move, obviously, but we're moving with much more velocity today with DOGE and some of the things they're doing. So I would anticipate it being in the end of this year or next year.
But the big companies, the big Fortune 1000 companies are definitely embracing it. Like you could see it in all the statistics. If you went to Accenture or Deloitte's website, to their career site, and you typed in data scientist, data engineer, any one of the major titles associated with AI, you'd see thousands, like armies of people that they're trying to hire. It's like truly fascinating.
Yeah, so we're not seeing an uptick in AI jobs on ClearanceJobs at this point, right?
I don't think so. Yeah.
Yeah, we're seeing an uptick. What we're seeing right now is a need for people to train AI models that have experience in classified work, missile systems, those kinds of things. So I would anticipate it happening very soon.
Yeah, I would say there's an uptick in like machine learning, which is adjacent or.
Oh, it's within AI, and it's like the traditional AI.
Yeah, so there's a lot that, and like the IC is doing a lot of work with machine learning and for deepfake detection and things like that. That's where I've seen it. And then I know commercial products, there are some language models that have gone through the government ATO process to be used by the military. So I've seen commercial companies having their products go through ATO to be used and bought on platforms. So I think it's going to be like potentially the industry pushing it in there before it's the government pushing it down as far as large-scale acquisitions, if that makes sense.
I personally think that in the past, like 30 years that I've been in business, it's always like the front-leaning companies in the commercial space that figure out what a new technology really means, and then the government figures it out a few years later. So, I mean, and usually healthcare, although this time healthcare looks like they're jumping on the idea of AI-enabled healthcare.
Well, the challenges that we have is we have needs for AI, but in the industry that we work, we can't find the people with the clearances.
Yes, the combination of the two.
That's the challenge, is we don't have enough people who have the clearances to do the work.
I think that in those particular cases, you're going to have to find people that have adjacent kind of skill sets and then make sure that they are trained up on AI. That's the only solution, because there just aren't enough AI engineers in the world to begin with.
Yeah, and we do find some coming out of the military side that have it, but still it's just not having that right poly that we need. And so it's a huge challenge.
It's really interesting. I'm going to have to go back and do a search on ClearanceJobs on people that have Python and have high security clearance, and see if there is a relevant high number, because a lot of people won't self-identify themselves as an AI engineer. They'll just say, I know Python. But the two are so intermingled, and having the Python skill set means that you could pretty much do anything you need to in AI.
But
So
AI people don't think that, so they don't put Python on their resume, which is the number one thing that we need. So I always have to ask them, like, do you know Python? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, then why isn't it on your resume?
yeah, there's a whole different discussion about how software developers look at the various programming frameworks, languages. And there's people that think that one is more sophisticated than the other, and so they'll only register the more sophisticated one. And there's still like this inherent bias in the technology world where people that code in Java believe that they have a more sophisticated kind of skill set than those people that code in Python.
Yeah, they're like embarrassed to put
Yes,
Python.
but Python is incredibly valuable, and it's super valuable for the future.
Art, Aisha had a comment.
Oh.
on this
Sorry, I was
topic.
like,
Flag me
excited
down.
that I was gonna weigh in on this, and I don't know if this is helpful, but we support the Chief Digital and Artificial Intelligence Office. There are many of them now, especially Special Operations, Space Force. They exist, and we're side by side in scaled AI. We see these guys every single day, and so this is already happening very fast in government. And we may not have things that have been ATO'd, but we are working with them to build custom LLMs. And what's started happening is we'll bring people in at secret, and then we will matriculate them up, right? So I'll take my SOCOM guys, have them on program for a couple of years, and then try to apply them to an NJ problem. But I, as an employer, will make sure that if you come in secret, I'm going to get you a TS, and then I'm going to try to push you up. But when I started 7 years ago, we were doing ETL for DIA. There was a huge
That's a great perspective. I have to say that that is a good point to make, which is the government is not monolithic, and that the intelligence community as part of the government, as well as special ops, generally gets new technologies earlier.
Yeah, especially in
And they're the leading edge.
And I would look at, so like we just were prime on trade when it's BOA. So like they put together an entire BOA they did 2-phase down to like just about the companies that do provide that service now. And so I would look at who's on that BOA and I would
Yeah.
look at who they're serving.
Fascinating. Yes, ma'am.
I'm one of the principal talent acquisitions, and we have over 1,000 positions, and we've ran into this. So I've gone to senior leadership and made the recommendation that we start to build a bench. Because when it comes to people with clearances, everybody wants them, nobody wants to pay for them. I've been recruiting for 25 years, so I went to my leadership and said, we got a couple of options. Do internships and apprenticeships, but let's start to build a bench so that we get the talent that we need, bring them in, train them up, and at the same time we're training them, help them get their clearances and move up. Because sometimes you have to do it homegrown if the market doesn't supply you with what you need.
I wholeheartedly agree.
I want to double tap on this here, and this kind of goes back to what I was saying in my talk about community college, because I don't think these are 4-year skill sets, right? I think that there's a partnership with community college that could be struck where people go, they get a 2-year kind of certification, we bring them in. Because a lot of my guys, even if they're computer science, they're not necessarily trained on the current methods, right? They've got to go, they've got to get additional skills and training. And so I think this is like trying to figure out like what are those programs, what are the partnerships with community college or kind of like certificate style bodies, and then how do we get those folks in?
Totally agree with that. And I'm a big fan of having those community college or associate programs. I was talking to my son the other day who's getting a 4-year degree at Boston College, and I go, you're having a course in art history? It's like, there's a lot of, I think that those shorter format kind of programs are actually vastly more focused, as they are intended to be.
So there's obviously a multitude of AI startups with essentially like 2 to 10 employees. Because of the nature of AI, are we expecting the same kind of industry consolidation in those companies, or do you think it might be a little bit different because AI relies on efficiency and automation?
Yeah, that's a really good question as to what size of company can actually manage the projects themselves, because it's an undertaking and it's a commitment, and whether or not you could have just 2 people running an entire company functionally with all the AI agents supporting different areas that you would regularly assign to people. I don't really have a view on that, other than I think that it really comes down to the commitment of the leadership as to what they want to do with AI. I sit on the board of a bank, and it's a bank called Community Banks of Colorado here in Colorado, and they really do not have an understanding of AI. But if you think about a bank, it's 95% bankers, people that are working on credit, people are working on their tellers inside of a retail bank, and only 5% technology. So you really have to fundamentally agree with the thesis that AI can be an efficiency tool and that it's going to be a different world in 5 years and you have to get ahead of it. So I think it's more about that than the size of the company. Great question.
Thank you, Art.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.